Hello there, Qckslvrslash, and today I'm driving the Tier 6 British cruiser, the Leander. And this video is going to serve as kind of a first impressions, how I feel about the British line thus far, and not as much an in-depth review, but just discussing some of the strengths and weaknesses of the line, and the playstyle I think you kind of have to adopt to have success. Now, right off the bat, two major points to the British line for those who don't know. One, there's no HE, and two, they've got single fire torpedoes or narrow spread. And I guess there's kind of the third point in there in that they're cruisers with smoke. Now that's a very short smoke screen, so if you're not almost stopped when you activate it, you're going to drive right out of it. And I've caught a number of enemy British cruisers doing just that. They activate smoke, kind of expecting it to behave like a destroyer's would, and go racing out the other side of the two puffs it manages to generate, and get themselves aced. Now the other major kind of thing about the British cruisers, they're light cruisers, right to tier 10, and they can absolutely get aced if you manage to get focused down, or not even focused, just hit by battleships, or a lot of kind of high caliber 203 cruiser fire. So you have to be very careful about your positioning or you're going to get yourself in a lot of trouble. And that's one of the first things that I really think is going to put this line really in a lot of people's bad books, is if you don't have a ton of games in World of Warships, you're a newer player, and you figure you're just going to go running up the British line because it's the British Navy, like the Royal Navy. I don't know that you're going to see a lot of success. I think you need a lot of experience in other ships and just driving and reading the map to really do well in this line. And part of it comes down to how quickly you can go from full health to no health. So I kind of agree with Wargaming in that this is definitely a line with a very high skill cap. And the people who do well in these ships do amazing. I've seen some nearly 300,000 damage games posted on the Slack channel I'm a group of. 300,000 damage in a Minotaur. Like, that's pretty crazy in my books. I've never seen anything close to that in any of my tier 10 ships, so I gotta give it to them. And that just shows, if you're good with these ships, you can do some pretty amazing things. So off the bat here, I'm kind of waiting to see what would come this way, and clearly not a lot. There was those destroyers that had spotted me early on, so I moved away, and that's what you gotta do. You have to keep yourself kind of on that secondary line of engagement. But knowing there's not a lot of actual fire support in this direction, especially once you start to look at the map, I can start pushing in and hopefully run down that 1DD, get some shots into these Omahas maybe, or what you're gonna see me do is turn straight north and go run down an enemy Saipan who, for God knows what his reasoning is, has driven over here. He was last spotted there. He's gonna be sitting behind this island. And that just boggles my mind. What CV player in the right mind just kind of drives off to a side where none of his team is? Like, if he drove over here, at least that makes sense, you know? A large portion of the enemy team is right there to support him. He is all alone where he just drove, and he's going to pay the ultimate price for that. So getting back to talking about the British ships, one of the other things I missed earlier is they've got Repair Party, and boy do you need it sometimes. You can just lose hit points like a Civ. Like, I can't even really compare it. I'd say some of the lower tier American and German cruisers is very comparable to the entry line, and the Emerald before this felt very much to me like the Omaha, with the key exception being there's no HE, and I really do feel that put the Emerald at a big disadvantage, because at that tier, HE is how you do a lot of the damage. But once you get to tier 6, suddenly not having HE, I find, hasn't been as big a negative, and this is the first ship in the line that I've really loved driving. And it could come down to actually having proper turrets, 2 barrels per turret, very good rate of fire. But I really think it comes down to she's kind of the first unique ship. She accelerates like a bat out of hell. The guns are reliable, and that's just not something that was the case at tier 5 or 4 in the lower tier ships, and it's because the gun layout and the rate of fire particularly is identical to, say, the Americans, like the Phoenix and the Omaha. And the armor's pretty much the same too when you think about it, because the Phoenix and Omaha were light cruisers. But you're going to see how quickly you can start to rake up some damage with these guns. 7-second reload, all AP, which when you get target side on, you just start to work them over. Really the first damage I've done all game, and I'm already up to 17,000, and it's just going to keep building. I've got an enemy Farragut over there. He's not really too concerning to me. Yes, he's shooting at me, but he's choosing, at least what it looks like, is he's choosing to use HE, AP. And I think in his mind, I'm a British light cruiser, that AP will get through. But at that 5 to 6 kilometer range, I think in the Farragut he's just a little too far out to do any significant damage, particularly with me as angled as I am. Now here you see one of kind of the major competitors, at least for the Emerald, and the Omaha hands down is a better ship, but against the Leander, this pair of Omahas isn't going to stand a chance against me. I activate the hydroacoustic just to know where the torps are from this Farragut, and you can see I can reliably work destroyers down. You don't lose that ability. In fact, I feel, in a way, because of the short arming time, the short fuse on these AP shells, which is kind of the national characteristic, you tend to get a lot fewer overpens. The shells detonate on thinner armor, aka destroyers. So definitely a strength there of these ships. And then the rest of the ships, whether it be, enemy battleships, you just have to aim for the superstructure. And once again, that short fuse time on the AP shells means the shells penetrate and detonate rather than just hyper-penetrating that we'd see from so many other nations. And at this point, this Omaha is just going to get wrecked. I've only got 2 of my turrets on. You can see them going astern, try to get more of my guns firing. And thankfully, I've got Armored Chimera, my division mate, out in front, keeping these guys spotted for now. And that's one of the reasons that the Brits don't do too well alone. Because your major defense is to pop this smoke and then shoot from it. So you've either got to be farther back, where you don't need the smoke, or if you are pushing up, you need people to push with you, and you need those people to stay outside of the smoke, or you're just not going to get damage. I'm fortunate, my division mate was doing just that for me, and look at those citadels on that Omaha. And one of the reasons I just love the Brits so far is that ability to just lay down 4 or 5 citadels of volley sometimes. It's kind of like the Qckslvrslash, one of my other favorite ships. Really good AP performance out of the Qckslvrslash. Now yes, I am picking on some tier 5s here, but you're going to see a bunch of tier 5s in your gameplay, and I've done massive damage to some of the tier 7 battleships out there just because I've been able to sit there and fire my guns consistently, and you get about 2,000 to 3,000 damage a volley if you're hitting that right part right at the bottom of the superstructure. So that's really how these ships have to drive, and you can see how quickly I managed to rack up 72,000 damage there in maybe 4 or 5 minutes. The game's been longer than that, but that's from when I started firing to that kind of damage total I made it to in 100 shells. 72,000, definitely very respectable. And this is really where the game ends. I drive forward, get into the cap, and end up capping out. So let's jump to the post-battle. And there we have it, 276,000, 3,500 experience. Got a kill with the secondaries, which kind of amazing considering she really has none. 72,000 damage, 3 kills, 5 citadels, and a couple planes even shot down. Overall, this feels like a pretty typical game for me in my Leander. I tend to get between 60 and 80,000 damage. I haven't figured out how to go beyond that, and it could just be putting in the number of games. But I never really do that poorly either, and I think the playstyle will work with me, and I just need a little more time to really get into it so that I can start having some of those amazing performances that I've seen other people put out. But it was still enough to top the team, and there's Armored Chimera right below me, so pretty good when you and your division mate carry the game. And of course, the other thing I've enjoyed about driving some lower tier ships again is just the earning potential. 252,000 that I just took home. You can't do that at tier 10 or tier 9. So it's nice to have a new line to grind up because it starts to fill my coffers again. And as you can see, 12,000 experience. I ended up not putting my Warspite Captain into this line. It's what I had originally planned, but the Warspite Captain and these British cruisers, they're really after two different things as far as skills go. So I'm going to keep it and pray for the day that British battleships come. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed the video, consider giving me a thumbs up or subscribing to the channel. Both really help me out and motivate me to make more videos for all of you. And as always, I'm Qckslvrslash, and I'll have another one for you tomorrow.